We're beginning to Daf Mesechta Sotah Daf. We're beginning on the top line of the Amud. We're actually in the middle of a Gemara. We're halfway through the four interpretations of why is it that when the Sotah's husband dies without any children, the halacha says that the brother does chalitza and not yibum. Why would that be? So we're in the middle of that Gemara's discussion. Something discussing today's Daf regarding the halacha of the next Mishnah, that in this context of the Sotah, what are the types of women that are forbidden to eat truma, because that's one of the three ramifications of a woman who possibly commit adultery. The Gemara gets into a discussion regarding Tli b'mayim hamarim, that although the bitter water is what it does, as the Torah tells us, is that her stomach bloats up, and then it pops, and then she dies, but sometimes it's not going to do that effect, either because she has a schus, or because, as we'll see in the Gemara, that's what's contested, is if yeshla edim b'minei sayam. If let's say there are witnesses who know, if there's witnesses, then no, we don't really need the waters to verify because witnesses know. So then actually it's machlekes in the Gemara, would we say that then the waters are not going to do their job or not? The halacha minchas and the which halacha is that a Sotah brings a mincha, but let's say halfway through she decides, okay, I'm not doing it, or something invalidates the Sotah process. What do you do with the mincha? That it's burnt not on the mizbeach, but actually on the bottom of the mizbeach. So we begin the current Daf Vav. We're halfway through the four interpretations of why is it that the Yavim is going to do chalitza, not yibum. So says the Gemara, ve'ikadami. There's those that say, Rav Yosef, a third pshat. So we already had two versions of Rav Yosef. We have a third version of Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Hakasav kare achar. The pasuk calls the one who marries this woman who did ervas davar, calls him an achar. Meaning, why is it called a different one, another one? It's because she'ein the Gir says zeh. This guy is not ben zugish rishon. He's not from the same cut, from the same cloth as the first guy. Why? He's not a peer to him. Because the first guy, he sees his wife acting immorally, doing all these things, he kicks her out of the house. And this other guy marries this woman who's divorced. He takes in this wicked one into his house. So that's why he's called an achar. Says Rav Yosef, and you're going to say that we're going to pose and require the brother to marry this Risha, this wicked woman? How can you say that would require Yibum, therefore that's why there's no mitzvah Yibum? Abai says to him, wait a second. If that's the case, where? You're telling me that the first guy divorces her because he finds Ervas Davar in her. And this is La'achar. What happens? Okay, so she gets married to someone, an Achar, some other person, not so idealistic, marries this woman. Then Umeis B'loi Banim, what happens if that other person dies without any children? Are you going to tell me Loitis Yabim? You should say that brother shouldn't do Yibim, like Katzav Kara Achar, because the pasuk is calling him the other one, which the way Rashi translated is that he's an Achar, meaning he's not Ben Zuga Shel Rishon if he's going to marry her, but yes, you're imposing upon him to do mitzvah Yibim to his brother. Says the Gemara, no, that's not difficult. Why? Because Gabei Dehai, for this Achar, his brother, meaning that other guy who didn't pay the lesson and took in this Risha, Miha, for him at least, B'Shem Taiv Havakaima, she did have a good name, meaning as Rashi says, you could say that she did tshuva, and he's not called an Achar only if someone marries her from a widowhood or being divorced from the one that she had been unfaithful to. So the first guy, his brother, you cannot impose. But when she married someone else, and then he does it on children, and with him, there was never anything unfaithful. When he does it on the children, yes, his brother will go ahead and do the mitzvah yibum. That's the third interpretation. And Rav Amma, he says the fourth interpretation. This that we said in the Mishnah, that the Yavim does not do yibum, is a kavachaymer. What's a kavachaymer? Im nesra. If the woman becomes forbidden by being secluded, which is the halacha of Sotah, b'muter law, to the one that she was always permitted to, meaning to her husband, who up until now they obviously were permitted to be intimate. And yet now the marriage gets ruined, that she's forbidden on him because of the stira. So ba'asala, so the one that she was always forbidden to, obviously a brother-in-law is an erva gemura, which was also when the husband was alive. Loi koshkin isn't all the more so that now the first marriage's problems carry over, that he cannot do yibum, which is coming from the first marriage. That's a kavachaymer, where of course she's going to be forbidden to him, just like she was to the husband. Which only Abai says to Rava, he says, wait a second, if that's this truth, then kaigola shekidish almana. Let's say you have a high priest who married a widow, which is actually forbidden. The kohen does not marry a widow. Umeis, and then he dies. Now he has a brother, a regular kohen, which a regular kohen is allowed to marry a widow. Now she's a widow twice over now, but it's permitted for kohen to marry a widow. So are you going to tell me loy tisyabim that the kohen shouldn't even from the same kavol chemer? If she's forbidden into the one that was always permitted to her, meaning to her husband, which the Gemara is going to shortly explain. What do you mean nesra? What do you mean mutrula? What do you mean the one that was forbidden to her husband can go always from the beginning? But that's how the simple understanding of the Gemara is read. If she's forbidden to the husband that was always permitted to her, and so ba'asla koshkin, so to the one that was forbidden to her, meaning her brother-in-law, isn't all the more so that she should be forbidden? Meaning even though Kohen heads allowed to marry a widow, but to her husband she was forbidden. Isn't all the more so she's forbidden to the brother-in-law? Says, no. I mean, it depends. If chiv alavim, that depends. If machlekes, if chiv alavim condition, yeah, it would be typhus. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's machlekes chiv alavim. Yeah, it would be typhus. So the Gemara says nesra. What do you mean? How can you say that became forbidden? Hasir b'kamet. She was always forbidden to her husband. Moreover, says the Gemara, mutula. You tell me, to the one that was always permitted, it's forbidden. To the one that's forbidden, should be forbidden. What are you talking about? Asalahu, he's always forbidden. So Elabada says the Gemara. This is what the Gemara's question is. If I can, a different case. Eishes Kohen Shenensa. Interesting case. A Kohen's wife was raped. Now, she actually becomes forbidden to him because Eishes Kohen is forbidden even if it was ba'inus. As Rashi explains, Eishes Yisrael, a regular Jewish woman, if she was violated, she's permitted. Like the pasuk says in Mebbe Behei, that a woman who was mazana, v'hiloy nitfas, and she wasn't forced, she's forbidden to her husband because she was mazana. The diak is obviously, if she was forced, she's permitted. But it says, v'hi loy nitfasa. And she? That's a miyat. To tell me that there is another Jewish woman, that even if she was violated forcibly, she's forbidden to her husband. That's the Eishes Kohen. Okay, but an interesting case. If you have the wife of a Kohen that was Nensa, Umeis, and then her husband, the Kohen dies, v'yesh le'ach. Now he has a brother, a paternal brother, that's a chalal. Meaning, he was born. The reason why it has to be only paternal, because it can't be the same mother, because then you would have, how do you have the case of one brother being kosher and the other brother being chal? But the other brother that's a chal was born, his father married a grusha. His father had another wife that was a grusha. Now, a kohen's not allowed to marry a grusha, a woman that's divorced. What?
He divorced her and remarried her?
Oh, he divorced and then remarried her. I hear, interesting. Why did Rashi have to say that it's achiv mi'avav? What can you say? That he was married to her, divorced her, and then remarried her. Okay, good shayla. So, and then he becomes the son becomes a chal for bekuna. Any child that's born from a forbidden kohanic relationship, the child is a chal. Now, a chal is permitted to marry women that are pasal for kahuna, which is ananusa. She's considered as a chalala, a woman. The Khan they're allowed to marry psulas, like it says b'leichal zarai, which obviously the chal becomes mechulul, and he's not like a kohen. He's allowed to marry those that are forbidden. So this woman that was nensa, who's forbidden now, the chal is really technically allowed to marry her. Now, but still, loy tisyabim. You should tell me that because she had this bia, so she should be forbidden from a kavol chemer. Why? If she became forbidden with this bia, that she was violated, she becomes forbidden to her husband, which was b'mutullah, who was permitted to her. So ba'asallah, so her brother-in-law, who was always forbidden. Like Koshkin isn't all the more so that she becomes forbidden to him. The marriage of the brother, which that he cannot do yibum to her from her original marriage, which her original marriage is forbidden, which he's allowed to do yibum because he's a chal, and the chal is allowed to marry a woman that's forbidden to kahuna. But you're telling me based on your svara, you should say the same kabel chaimer. If she's forbidden to her husband, then she's forbidden to her brother-in-law. So the Gemara says, no, it's different. Why? Oynis, regarding when a woman is violated, by the Jewish people, that's permitted. And therefore, regarding this yavam, there's no isser. Meaning, for the brother-in-law, it's totally permitted because he's a chal, so there's no kabel chaimer. Meaning, if she was mazan the b'rotzin, so the husband and the brother-in-law are equally forbidden in a woman who's mezana if it was in their relationship. So that would be a kabel chaimer, like we said, because of the first marriage that she's zakuk to yibum, and if she's ruined to the husband, she's ruined to the yavam. So that's what Rava was saying regarding the halacha of the Sotah. But regarding a case of oynis, that's not be'etzim a problem for the brother-in-law because he's a chal. And therefore, that wouldn't be a viable Kavul Chaymer. It's only when, for both of them, if she was married to him, would it be a problem? And then he's taking over the marriage of his brother, so therefore then it's going to be a problem. And therefore that's the fourth approach of why the Yavam is forbidden to Yibam, to the Sotah, and rather would have to go ahead and do Chalitza. Now we can do a look at the next Mishnah that continues on this theme, because like we said, there's three things that happen when the woman's a Sotah. She's forbidden to her husband, forbidden to that other man that she's suspected with, and she is forbidden to eat Truma. So says the Mishnah, these women are forbidden to eat Truma if the husband is a Kayin. So she's not allowed to eat Truma anymore. Which is, if a woman says to her husband that I am tummy to you, meaning I was defiled. Which Sheshes brings that the Gemara at the end of Nadarim brings from Rabbi Sheshes that she could eat Truma. You have to explain that here we're talking about since after Kinun Stira. Meaning, generally, you don't believe a woman when she says Tamei Nilach because she's just looking elsewhere, greener pastures, she wants to get out. She says, oh, I'm sorry, I was Mazana. She can get out. No, so Taisa just explains, it's talking about that, here was warning, and Stira, then we do believe her. And B'Shabbo, Eidim Shi Tumeya, or let's say there's witness that come along and say that we know that she was defiled. Or the Mechaz Eini Shai, so a woman says, I'm not drinking. Or V'Shabbayla in the Reis Lashkai, so the husband doesn't want to give her a drink. Or V'Shabbayla Ba'al Lebaderach, if the husband goes and is intimate with her on the way up to Yerushalayim to drink the Beisaita, the waters are not going to inspect her anymore. Like the Gemara tells later in the Chav Chesem and Aleph, the pasuk says, "V'nikah ishma avan." If he goes through this whole process, the husband is going to be cleansed from sin. But what that means also is when the husband is cleansed from sin, that he did not be with her after she was forbidden to him, because the woman is a Saita, even in the suffix, is forbidden to the husband. Then the woman will carry her sin, meaning to say that. But if the husband is not clean from sin, the waters are not going to inspect the woman. Okay, so then in all these cases, since we have no way of verifying, we have no way of doing the Meisai, she's now forbidden to eat Truma. Now, Amr Rav Amram, we're going to relate back to the Mishnah. Rav Amram says, Ha milsa amalan Rav Sheshes. The following teaching Rav Sheshes said to us, V'aner lan einin, and he illuminated our eyes, meaning he brought a proof to these words from our Mishnah. What was the halacha Rav Sheshes said? So he said like this, if the suspected adulterous woman, meaning anyone here in town doesn't really know if she was Mazana or not, but there are witnesses overseas that saw her being Mazana, but just they're not in town now. The waters are not going to check her. So the husband's like, yeah, he warns her and she secludes, and no one knows. That's it, we're going up to the base of Mikdash. It's not going to check her. It's not going to do the whole thing about her stomach blowing up and her dying. Because my time, what's the reason? Because I'm a proclaim. The pasuk is b'midbar. It says, "V'nistacha," she's going to seclude, "V'hinitma," and she's going to become defiled, "V'eid ba," and there's no edim. Oh, like the other ba. If there's no edim, no one knows anything that's going on with her, then the waters are going to check her out. That excludes over here. The ikadi other ba. There are those who know what's going on. Now, Rashi explains that this is actually a problematic drasha, because the Gemara on the previous daf had actually translated the pasuk of a eid ein ba. If you recall, eid ein ba just meant there's no unit of testimony. There's no two witnesses, but there's actually one aid, and it's actually teaching us that a Sotah vadai, when there's one aid, is not going to drink anymore. So how are you learning from this pasuk that you tell me when the Sotah suffix work is when there's no aidim, but if there's aidim, then it's not going to work? That's not what the pasuk's saying. The pasuk's saying if you don't have two, but you have one, then she's actually going to be usher like a Sotah vadai. Says Rashi, okay, but ein mikra yotzei b'nei pshutai. You're right, that's really how we darshan it. But the simple translation of the pasuk is saying ve'eid ein ba. When there's no witnesses, then we say v'heva ishas ishta in the whole parasha. But if there's eidim, then the water's not going to check her out. That's how Rashi resolves that difficulty.
Even if we don't know, we have to know that there's eidim, or that's we don't know.
Right. No, it sounds like right. It sounds like that nothing to do with us. It's just not going to work. If there are eidim, we don't know. It's just not going to work. The Gemara is going to discuss this shortly, but it's just not going to work because the Torah says only ve'eid ein ba. And the Chadamis, so the Gemara is going to discuss that. So that was the halacha that Rav Sheshes said. Says the Gemara, and he illuminated us from the Mishnah. What did he prove from the Mishnah? So, meaning, because as Rashi explains, what do you mean? Didn't he just bring a pasuk? The pasuk he brought was that it says ve'eid ein ba. So says Rashi, no, because the pasuk is not really such a proof. Because like we said, really the pasuk is telling us that a Sotah Vadai, when there's an Eid Echad who testifies that he saw the Tumah, teaches that she's not going to drink. So it's not such a good proof. So rather he brought a proof from our Mishnah. The Tani, what we learned in the Mishnah, it said, one of the cases of a woman that doesn't eat Truma was Vishabola Eidim Shitimeya. If witnesses come along and say that she was defiled, then she's most definitely usher for Truma. Says the Gemara like this. The usher Eidim Ema. So this is what Rav Sheshes was proving from our Mishnah. When did these witnesses come along and say that she was defiled? If it's before she drank the waters, hello, Zainahi. She's a Zaina. Obviously she's forbidden the Truma, because it's just like the case of the Mishnah Ha'meres Tameani. If witnesses come along, of course she's not going to eat Truma. Ella, rather, this is the lamdus that he's saying, Lebasa de Shatay. Must be, we're talking about that the witnesses come after she already drank. And nothing happened when she drank. And we have to tell you that we're not presuming that the Edom are liars, because what are you talking about? If it's true, like she was Mizan, the way you're saying, she should have been blowing up at this point. So the Gemara explains like this. If you say, that when there are witnesses somewhere in the world, the water's not going to check her out. Oh, very geschmack, shopper. Of course we're not going to presume the witnesses are lying. You know why? Because you knew that's why the water didn't do anything. Because you were around. But if you say which would be Pash Pshat, a kid in Cheder would say, yeah, what do you mean? The waters are going to blow her up. I don't care if people know, but we didn't know at that point. Then Tigl Muslim Afraid then should be revealed retroactive to Sadi Shakaninu. You must be lying, your witnesses, because why didn't the waters do anything? Obviously, that we see that, no, this was Rav Sheshes proving from our Mishnah, must be that when there are witnesses somewhere, it's not going to do anything to the woman. Now, the Gemara rejects this. And Amalei Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, not necessarily the case. How is he going to disprove this right? He says like this. Truthfully, I could tell you that it's not true. Even if there's witnesses somewhere overseas on some trip in Italy, the waters will inspect her. But you're going to say that schus toilala, that the Gemara tells us later in Daf Chaf Med Aleph, meaning the question is like this: how can we believe the witnesses? If she's surviving, so you're telling me that it does the work. If you say like Rav Sheshes, okay, that's hagufa. That's why she didn't blow up, because we were witnesses. But if you hold like Rav Yosef, so then why didn't she blow up? Says the Gemara, no, you could say that's chus taila. The Gemara in Daf Chaf is going to tell us that there are certain merits people have. The Ma'amar don't do anything to them. So therefore, that's maybe why. Her merits protected her, but really she was mizana, and therefore she's going to get executed. So the Gemara explains, b'mai kamiflagi, what's his machlekes of Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef in this interpretation? If you're going to say that the schus is toila or not, it must be a raya that because when there's edim, that's why she didn't blow up. Is b'misnavna de Rebbe. Is the Gemara later on the Chav Beis brings three-way machlekes regarding if there's a schus that can be toila by a woman. So you have, first of all, you have the Rabbanan. They say if there's a schus, there's a toila. Yeah, the merits may be temporarily protecting her from the ill effects of the water. Then you have Reb Shimon, who says, no, in schus toila b'mayamar, we're going to bring him very shortly, Reb Shimon. Not quoting him right now. He says, merits don't save her from the waters. And then you have the third interpretation, that of Rebbe. He says, schus toila b'mayamar, it may delay her death from the waters, meaning, she doesn't give birth, meaning generally what happens is that the woman who's falsely accused, she gives birth to twins, to baby boys, whatever this and that. Here it's not going to be like that, but misnavna v'leches, she's going to get more disgusted as time goes on, and at the end she's going to die in the same death. So she steadily deteriorates.
This title is good that she's not going to die, but how can she go back to her husband?
No one's saying she's going back to the husband. We're going to see that.
If the mind didn't do it, then she could go back.
Oh, I'm saying, Shilas, you want to know in the immediate after effects, but the point is that the water is going to do what it's going to do. The husband is not, there's no Edom over here. Until there's Edom, there's no Isser. I mean, you have a suffix site. Yeah, you have to know what happened. Well, I guess we'll see when we get there.
Just doesn't mean that she did it, but she has a schus.
No, but that's just saying that she's not dying yet the way it's usually a very gruesome type of a death. So we're saying the effects won't happen right away. You have a meritorious woman she'll have it a little bit more, a slower type of a degradation. Now, but the Gemara says this machlokes between Rabbanan and Rebbe is what the machlokes is between Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef. Why? Because the Gemara says did not. We learn the Mishnah of Chav Beis. Rebbe Yomi says his words are schus toil b'mayim alarim. You could have a merit that suspends the bitter waters. Meaning, like Rashi says, she's not going to blow up right away, but then you allowed this. She's not going to give birth. She's not going to get better. She's not going to get prettier. She's going to become more disgraced as she can get weaker by leches and continuing. And let's say if she makes somebody at the end, she's going to die the same death. Ultimately, her stomach is going to get bloated, her thighs are going to fall, and that's how she's going to die. Now, says the Gemara like this: Rav Sheshes held bein l'Rebbe, bein l'Rabbanon, meaning Rav Sheshes holds that the Rabbanon don't disagree on Rebbe. Rather, if the end that she's going to die in that same death, that's what they disagree. But regarding the deterioration process, that they don't disagree. That whoever, even though she has a schus tayla, have a misnavna. She's going to become more repulsive. Now, so therefore, as Rashi fears us, he follows through. He says, this woman, since she's not nisnavna, she's not deteriorating. I mean, their whole machlekes is regarding will she end up dying from the same death. Everyone holds no, die a different way. Rebbe says yes, she will, but the nisnavna part that happens right away. That people start seeing something going on with this woman. Now here, where she was not nisnavna, so obviously that it's not a schus that's working for her, because it was a schus. Schus doesn't take away the nisnavna part. So why is she not being misnavna? Why is she not becoming repulsive? Must be because she's not going to be inspected at all. Well, why is the water doing nothing? Because of Eidim. Because when there's Eidim, it doesn't do anything. Because Eidim know the secret. Oh, so therefore that's Rav Shesh's proof. If you're saying that she's not nisnavna, must be because there's halacha of Eidim. That's his halacha. But Rabbi Yosef Sabi held no. It's not true. When there's Eidim, a woman would be checked out. But it's a schus being tayla. And why is she not being the snabna? Says Rav Yosef, it's going like Rabbanan, because he holds the Rebbe have misnabna. The Rabbanan disagree on that point too. According to Rabbanan, she starts becoming disgusting right away. The Rabbanan have misnabna. According to Rabbanan, that they say schus tayla, they actually hold that they hold it's not misnabna at all. And therefore, it could be the schus tayla and not the Eidim part, because actually Eidim, so we have this machlekes regarding if Eidim is going to make it that she's not going to be checked out at all, which depends on the machlekes and how to learn the Rabbanan who disagree with Rebbe. Do they hold that as misnabna, even when the schus or not? If you hold misnabna, then there must be because of the halach of Eidim, because nothing's happening to her. Whereas Rabbi Yisrael holds, no, Rabbanan holds is not even misnabna. So there could be this schus, and there is no raya to halacha of Eidim. Now, however, most of Rav Shimon bar Ashi, he asks on Rav Sheshes from the Mishnah over there, because there's a third opinion, like we mentioned. Shimon, he says, in schus toil b'mayim amarim. No merits will suspend by the bitter waters, because he says the following svara. So if you're going to say that merits will suspend the activating ingredients of the bitter waters, nothing can happen to her. If they call it nashma sheises, you're going to be pushing away the power of the influence of the bitter waters by the women, because they're not going to be afraid of it. The whole point is to intimidate them to admit that she was mezana and that it shouldn't erase God's holy name for nothing on the water. People are going to say, I'll have schus, right? Nothing's going to happen to me. And also about the shemer al tahara shashasu, you're also spreading false words about the pure women that did drink, because people are going to say, it's amazing, she was mezana. Oh, she comes to Rebbe Shemishbucha, schis uves, but she was mezana. So therefore, Rabbi Shimon says, no, you can't say such a thing. There's no schus as toila. If a woman drinks, must be in shitar. If she's tamei, she's going to get her punishment. Okay. Now, says Rabbi Shimon bar Ashi, Trav Sheshes, Vim Isa. Now, if it's true that you're telling me there's another variable, if there are Eidim somewhere in the overseas, and this was the question that you were mentioning before, that's not going to check her, so now also, Yesh Eidim B'nei Zayam, she has witnesses overseas, you're still spreading the same false words about the pure ones that did drink, because people are going to say, Tamei saw you. She probably was mezana. It's just a man mezayam. The reason why she's not getting punished is because there's witnesses overseas. So how do you resolve that according to Rabbi Shimon? Says the Gemara. Says Rabbi Sheshes, Rabbi Shimon, comrade? You bring it to me from Rabbi Shimon? No, you're right. I wasn't going to Rabbi Shimon. The Rabbi Shimon in the schus leitaya, according to Rabbi Shimon, from the fact that schus does not suspend, for that same reason, because he's concerned for the rumors that's going to go out in the tahiris, Eidim Nami Loitala. Of course, Rabbi Shimon would hold that witnesses also would not be Taila, and Hashem would not make it that nothing would happen because then people are going to say, oh, could be this Eidim. So you're right, I was only going in the Rabban and Rebbe, I wasn't going in Rabbi Shimon. Mamasav Rav. Rav asks on Rav Sheshes from that same Mishnah over there. The Mishnah says, Ve'elon, these are the women, Shemechlesehem, that their flower offerings, we know that a Sotah, the suspected adulterous woman, has to bring a minchas kanais, which is 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. Now, says the Mishnah over there that these menachas have to be in the srafis. They're burnt, meaning not on the mizbeach, they're burnt on the floor where the ashes go, because it's not fit to be sacrificed. You cannot redeem it to go out for chulin, they have to be burnt. What are these cases? We continue to Beis. If a woman says, oh, I am tameh, meaning she admits to the courts that she was mezana, because they, as the Mishnah tells us later in Av Zayin, they keep on intimidating her, and they keep on saying, yes, are you sure, this, now, whatever. So, therefore, she admits that she's tameh. So that's the case where the mincha is going to be burnt. And if witnesses come along and testify that she is tameh, so then, okay, there's no point in going through the whole process. We're going to go ahead and burn the mincha. Says the Gemara, wait a second. When exactly did these edim come? And that is as follows. If they came before that the flour was sanctified by putting into the kli to the service vessel, what are you talking about? Why does it have to be burned? Why can't it go out to be unconsecrated by redeeming it? Because it never had a physical sanctity. It just had an oral sanctity. All menachas can be redeemed as long as you didn't sanctify it in the vessel, as the Gemara says in menachas daf kuf. So Ella obviously rather, it's labasa the kaddish. Must be where it's after that it was already sanctified in the kli shagas, because kli shagas is makadish what's rofred, where it cannot go out to be chuln anymore, as the pasuk says, "Kol in the game behem yikdus." Whoever touches the vessel becomes sanctified, and you can't sacrifice it now because it's only coming for the point of recalling the sin of the one who's being checked out. Here she's already checked out, and it also cannot be brought as nadava because you cannot bring a nadava of a minchas sa'irim. The only flour offerings that are barley offerings that are brought are the Sotah and the carbon omer. So therefore it has to be burnt. Okay. But says the Gemara as follows. If you say, not like Rav Sheshes, and you say, Mayim boid kinaisa, the water checks out. If she drinks before the Edom come, it will check her out. So then, Alma, so you see that when you put the flour offering to the vessel, it was fit for the Kli Shagas, because at that moment, Bas Mikdash Migravi, it was appropriate to be sanctified and to be sacrificed from the doubt, like all other Mechasaite, when we always have a doubt. So therefore, v'chikadosh mikach, when you originally had sanctified in the vessel, shapa kadosh, it was an appropriate sanctification. Oh, mashamachi. Therefore, when the edim ultimately do come and it becomes invalidated from being sacrificed, what's called mikan elaba, now you can't sacrifice it. So that cannot go out to be chulin, and therefore minchas Shabbos has to be burnt. But Eliam, but if you say like Rav Sheshes, I have a problem. You tell me if there's witnesses. Then the whole Sotah procedure is not going to check her out because she's not ready to be checked out and therefore she's not rofa mincha either because there's Adam somewhere. So Tiglim Milsamafre, why didn't you say retroactively it's revealed? The Chikodesh Mikor, when we had originally sanctified it, Kodesh. It was sanctified in error. It was not fit for a Kli because she wasn't the parasha of the Sotah. And the Kli Shagas is only Mikadosh what's rofa, as the Gemara says in the Bacham, not Bevav Manalev. So therefore Tebel Chulun. And actually, like Rashi says, it actually got to chulin without even redeeming it, because the oral sanctification that it had, and even the kedushas kli that it had, was all betois. We thought you needed mincha, but it's not the case, and the hektish choice is not hektish. So why is it that you're saying it has to be burnt? So maybe Yehudim in the Skarta, he says, interesting answer. We're talking about where kugoin shezinza ba'azara. When we said that Adam come along and say that she was mezana, is actually talking about, we already were in this woman is such an adulteress, that we already put the mincha into the vessel in the Beis HaMikdash, and in the Azara she was mezana with someone. And it's for this nus that Adam come, not the tumah of the stira rishayna. So therefore, the Chikodesh Meikar, when it was originally sanctified, Shaper Kaddish, it was appropriate sanctified because there were no Edim on the first stira, meaning Rav Sheshes is correct that if there's Edim, it's not going to check her out. So we asked if it's not going to check her out, so the whole Kedusha was b'tois. It shouldn't be kaddish. So we're answering, no, you're mistaken. The first nus didn't have Eidim. So therefore it was a valid kedusha. What do you mean? I thought Eidim are coming saying Shemazana. No! Shemazana second time in the Beis HaMikdash in the Azara. Now Eidim are saying, hey, this woman, you bring her a mincha? We just saw her 2 minutes ago with this guy. Okay, so you can't bring it. There's no point in bringing the mincha now. We know you're a Sotah. We know you're a Vadai Sotah. But that mincha has to be burned because that wasn't Kedusha's toys, because that didn't have Eidim. That when you put in the kli, it was roli kaddish, and therefore it has to be burnt. But the problem with this, says Gemara, that's a very interesting answer. Maskal of Masharshi said, we have all the young kahanim that are escorting, they get excited when you do a chalitza in the bezdin. They get excited. Everyone bring in the whole shiva light. Let's see, they take off this old shoe that they have sitting there. They're Sotah. Everyone comes running and they're escorting her. How could she have been mezana? Says Gemara, yes, the young kahanim, they see this woman and they're mezana with her. That's one approach. Rav Hashem, he gives a different approach. He says, no, she has to go to the bathroom. She has to relieve herself. So they leave her, and then she went to be mezana. Like the Gemara says, you think that the young kahanim with a cap on her head, talila, that they're hanging from her, that she doesn't leave their grasp for 1 second? And she said, I need to go use the lavatory. So she goes, and she goes around behind the thing, and she's mezana. Okay, that's one approach. Rav Papa Amma, he says, no, it's not that she was mezana in the Azara. That's not going to answer the question of Rav Sheshes. He gives a different approach. He said, La'olam kedamrina meikara. Truth is, like we said before, like we originally thought to say, that it's actually the Eidim are coming for, when they say Eidim came, Shabola, Eidim Shi Tameya, is going on the first seclusion that she had. So then we had a difficulty. Rav Sheshes says, wait a second, according to you, it should be Kedushas to us, because you tell me it doesn't check her out at all. Says Gemara, no, it's not difficult in Rav Sheshes. Why? Because udika'amidis that you're saying that since it's not fit to really be sanctified, typical chulin, it should go out to be chulin. So the Gemara says you're right. Biblically, it's automatically chulin because it was a kedushas toys. Since there were edim, that means to say she was never fit for the whole ceremony. But midirabanan, it's rabbinically burnt. Why? Why rabbinically burnt? Because not everybody's so proficient in halacha to know that because there were edim, therefore wasn't fit to be sanctified. And therefore it's a gzeira, it's rabbinic decree, Shema Yemel, because people are going to say, Maitzin, I see they took something that was sanctified, Mikli Sharas L'chayil. I saw, they took it, I saw the Kayan, he took it and he just took it in his bologna sandwich, and he took it out to his wife at home. I see you could take something from Mikli Sharas and it can become a chulin. No problem. He doesn't realize that it was a whole Kedusha's toys, because, what do you mean, she was a Sotah? No, but they were Eidim, and therefore that's why it was not bad. So it's a big mistake. Therefore, rabbinically is why we burn. Now, Masra Mori asks, however, on this interpretation of Rav Papa, because we have a brayso that says, Nitmis minchasa, that if her mincha becomes tamei, it becomes in contact with, let's say, a dead person or whatever, so actually, kitchen bekli, if it wasn't yet sanctified in the vessel, okay, so it's like all flour offerings that become tamei before you sanctify it in the vessel, and you can redeem it, and then you take from those monetary proceeds and you bring another mincha. But if let's say it was already sanctified in the vessel, you already put it in, and then a dead sheretz comes in and falls on it, now it's like all other flour offerings, but this has to be burnt. Now, says the brayso, let's say the following case. Kiddush hakaimet. Let's say you sanctified the fistful, which the fistful is the part that's sacrificed on the mizbeach. So you take off from the bowl, you take off a fistful, and you put it into a different klisharis. So that sanctifies it with the kedusha of a kaimetz, because like Rashi explains, a flour offering requires 4 avodas, just like you have 4 avodas by an animal sacrifice. Because when you take the fistful from the klisharis, it's like the shchita. It's like opening up to get the blood out, which is the main avodah by the animal carbon. Here, it's like the knife of the klisharis that's mekadesh the dam. So when you receive the blood, so that's when you put the kaimetz into a bowl. That's like the second service of Kabbalah Sadam. And then you transport it, which is like halacha by an animal sacrifice. And then by burning the kaimetz, the fistful, that's like the Zrikas Adam. So these are the 4 avodas. So be that as it may, says the brayso, when you sanctify the flour offering and you put it into a bowl, now you didn't get a chance to actually sacrifice it until the husband died, which obviously now the woman's not drinking anymore, because who we coming to permit her for? Her husband's dead. Or maybe no, she actually died before we got a chance to sacrifice it. Okay, says the Brisa, so it's going to be like all flower offerings, which there's an invalidation in it between the kemitza and the aktaha. And these are, you're going to burn the rest of it, you're going to burn it on the bottom of the mizbeach, and not on the mizbeach itself. Now, what happens if karva kaimitz? What happens if you already sacrificed the fistful, but the kohen did not get a chance to eat the leftovers, where the husband died or she died. Then says the right, then it's like all flower offerings, and it could be eaten. Why? Originally, it came for this doubt, was she mizan or not? Now, Kipra, this mincha atoned for sveika, for this doubt, because that's the point of the mincha is, of the mincha's kenois, and it's done. Meaning, as Rashi explains, this kapara is not really atoning for her sin. If she was mizan, it's not atoning. It's a maskeras oven. It recalls her sin. But it's an appropriate kapara for her, meaning we say that the mincha was done at a time when you sacrificed the kaimitz, whatever you were supposed to do, you did, and that's the validation of this carbon. So then, after that, she comes and she drinks and she gets checked out. So since you sacrificed it with all its halachas, so now even though he's dead or she's dead, okay, lamaisa, it was an appropriate carbon, so leftovers can be eaten as long as there's no inherent invalidation in the body of the mincha itself. The fact that she or he's dead is irrelevant. Now, but what happens, says the Brisa, what happens if witnesses come along? On this, as Rashi explains, it's going on the case before you sacrificed. You didn't sacrifice it yet. Before you mocked the kaimitz. Edom come running, panting, come running and say, we know she was mizana. Mechasa and nisrafis. So the flower offering gets burnt. Now, this is the main point the Gemara says. Now, the next case is, what happens if nimtzeo eideha? What happens if you find that the witnesses who had testified that she was secluded, which is the whole reason why we're bringing the mechasaita, they turn out that they're zaymin. They were liars. We find out that they couldn't have seen her secluded because they were somewhere else that same day. So then says the Brisa, mechaseha chulan. Her mincha is unconsecrated, meaning it doesn't have an oral sanctity, doesn't have a physical sanctity. There's not going to be any me'ilah because there was one big mistake. It was one big lie. The ones that Edom said that she did stira were lying. So what's the raya from this Brisa? So what's the question on Rav Papa? Says Rashi. Obviously, we see that we don't say that rabbinically we're going to burn it when you find the Edom that was Zayman. Wait a second, maybe people are going to say, you're taking from a Kli Sharis, the Kamitza, and we see we eating pizza in somewhere in Beitar, I don't know, somewhere. Obviously, when we say, Bola Edom Shitameya, Mechasa Nisrafis, must be biblically, because it is sanctified. Because rabbinically we don't say that, because then why don't you say this in this case of the Brisa too, that it shouldn't go out to be chulin? It's the same thing. People are not going to know because the Edom was Zayman. So obviously it's not like our Papa. And his answer to answer Rav Sheshes is not going to be valid, and therefore you're back to the question. Says the Gemara, no. Edom Zayman kamret? You're talking about a case of Edom Zayman? Edom Zayman, kala islahu. Everybody knows when there's Edom Zayman, and everyone's going to know that it was a hektish betois. Regarding to the case of when there's Edom Medinas Hayam, that's already a very complex halachic angle, and people are not going to know that. But Edom Zayman, wow, you heard the case with Mrs. B? Wow, the whole thing that they suspected and the husband took her up, the Edom were lying. So people are going to know that. So you say, oh, of course they took the mincha. And therefore, it's not a difficulty on Rav Papa's interpretation. Now the Gemara says, Tani Kavasid Rav Sheshes, we have a Brisa that says like Rav Sheshes, that yes, the warders will not inspect the Saita when there are Edom. But, V'lami Tameh. So although we're going to have a Brisa that actually says like him, but it's actually not for his reasoning. We're going to bring a Brisa that says his same halacha, but from a very different source. Meaning, what was Rav Shesh's source? Was the pasuk ve'ed einba, which is that it only works when there's no Edom, but this Edom is not going to work. So, like Rashi explains, no, that's not true, because that pasuk's not talking about suffix saita, the darshan that a suffix saita, the whole ceremony is only going to work when there's no Edom. That's like we said on the previous daf. It's actually teaching us a saita vadai, which means that we don't let her drink. She's definitely usher, because it says the aid, a unit of aid of two Edoms is not. There's one aid, then she'd be forbidden. Rather, the Brisa learns it from a different source. What's the Brisa's source? So the pasuk in Bamidbar says that ve'im loy nitma ha'isha, that if the woman was not defiled, and rather tahira she's actually tahar. So the pasuk tells us v'niksa, she's going to be cleansed. V'nizazech, she's actually going to seminate. She's going to have children. Now the problem is, as Rashi is explaining in the Gemara, the Bryce is saying it should have said in the pasuk ve'im loy nitma, if she's not tummy, v'niksa v'garma, then she's cleansed. Why do you have to tell me v'tahira? Obviously, you just told me loy nitma. Obviously, tahiri. It's coming to make the following drasha: that if she's tahira, then she's going to be nizra zera. Then she's going to have children. Meaning, v'loy, and not a case when she's saved simply from the waters, but not because she's tahira, she's saved from the waters, but because she has edim medina sayam, because she has witnesses overseas that she was tummy, and therefore it's not checking her out. Then she's not going to be seminating and have children. Oh, that's like Rav Sheshes, but just from a different pasuk. So it's like him, but v'lo mitamei. So that one drasha says like him. But then the Brisa continues to say other drashas from this pasuk. There's a vav. It says utahayrehi. That extra vav comes to teach v'lo shatasul schus. And also, you know which woman is not only not going to die a dastard death, but is going to actually have blessing in how she's going to have children? Is only if because she was a tahira. But when she's saved because of schus, then we didn't say benizra zera. And also in the pasuk, the last word, when it says he, which is exclusionary terminology, that's the woman who's going to have children and being blessed for being falsely accused. V'loy, and not if she's saved from the waters, because actually her disgrace, her znus, was so well known that she yisu b'yitnu ba'moizres b'lavana, that the women who would sow by the light of the moon, they're schmoozing and saying, you heard Mrs. B, you heard Mrs. B, you heard Mrs. B. So such a woman is saved from the water because she's not a suffix. Everybody knows about her. But that's not the type of woman that's going to get the blessing of a niksa v'nizra zera. So we have three women that are excluded if she had edim medin sayam, she had a schos, or because everyone knows. But you see the halacha of Rav Sheshes, at least in that first one, that if you're edim medin sayam, you're not going to get the punishment. Again, from a different source, but you're not going to get the punishment. Now, says the Gemara, but Rabbi Shimon, that he actually said, there's no schus taila, so this middle drush that we said from the Vav, that says, oh, it's schus taila, he holds, no, it's schus not taila, nihi the Vav, leidarish, so the Gemara asks a question, says, okay, I understand he doesn't darshan the Vav to be taila b'schus, but you do have, as the Gemara continues to have a zayin and alf, yesh la'idm v'mdin sayam, meaning, you have the drush of tahirihi, when you have edim, that's learned out from the pasuk from the extra word of tahira. So that's difficult, because you told me, and the Gemara had established this earlier, that when there is edim, you can't say that edim can be matzel, because it's the same thing. People are going to say, oh, this woman, she's Torah, she's not Torah. There must have been edim overseas. Because that's the whole reason why he says chus is not Torah. So how could edim be Torah? What do you do with the drush of Torah? I understand it's not dash in the vav, because some don't dash in vav, so what do you do with Torah? Says the Gemara, loy shchicha. It's not common. Meaning, like Rashi explains, people are not going to entertain to think, to suspect her, that, oh, she's not really Torah, but she has witnesses overseas. Rashi says, I think Gemara previously had mentioned that according to Rabbi Shimon, from the fact that schus is not Torah, edom also not Torah, says Gemara, that's only because the Gemara didn't yet know this drush over here. But the truth is, according to how the Gemara comes out, it's lo shchiach, and also says Taisus, bo lebaderech is also not shchiach, because they also will not check her out if her husband was intimate with her on the way up. Again, that's not shchiach, so people are not going to suspect. But if a schus would be Torah, people say, it must have been the schus, must have been the schus, and therefore that's why this is not difficult on Rabbi Shimon. He does agree it would be matzel, but again, it wouldn't create the problem about people being chayshish in the taharas. Thank you to any time for hosting us.